This video is for all the high-income Muslims struggling in a relationship. You probably heard before that if you want a happy relationship, you need to do the work, you need to work on yourself. Maybe, if you're listening to this video, even your partner have said that to you. So, what's the truth? The truth is, working on yourself won't save your relationship. Studies have consistently shown that just working on individual level won't fix your relationship, and if the two partners work on themselves and not on the relationship, you won't have a better marriage. Though, if you work on the relationship and you don't work on yourself, studies have shown that yes, you can have a better relationship. So it doesn't work that way. Despite that, it's true that the path to fixing your relationship necessitates work and effort. It's not an easy path, and you need resilience to be able to go to that path. Therefore, I think you may need a few individual work, not because it will fix your relationship in itself, but because if you do this individual work, you will have more resilience and you'll have higher chance to take the right course of action and change your relationship. It's like business. Just working on yourself, having a better lifestyle, and a healthy lifestyle won't give you wealth. It won't give you success in entrepreneurship. But does it mean you need to have a bad hygiene and a bad lifestyle? No, because success with a bad lifestyle is way more difficult, and you are drastically reducing your probability of being successful in your business. In this video, I'll share with you the 4 most useful practical tools you can put in application in your life if you want to do the individual work, have more resilience, be a better person, and raising the probability of you being successful in your relationship. Of course, if you want more direct relationship advice and see how you can actually fix the relationship, you can go on the other videos in this channel where I'll speak about that in great details. What I'll share with you are the 4 insights from my experience that was actually very useful for me. The reason why you may want to listen to this advice is, first, I'm a practicing Muslim, so these advice are, I hope so, all compatible with Muslim faith, and because I'm a clinical therapist, I worked in this field for many years, and I think I've done my research thoroughly on all main psychological problems. So I'm quite aware of all the different approaches, and this is derived from my personal experience helping high-income Muslims saving their marriage, and my personal experience trying to put these things into practice. But before I delve into the 4 advice I can give you, I want to speak about the 2 mistakes I've made and that made me waste many time and efforts along the way. I want you to take the shortcuts, and I don't want you to take the long and difficult path. So let me share that with you, and please pay attention. The first big mistake I've made is trying by any way to get rid of efforts. Let me explain that. There's a bestseller that has been published a few years ago called Atomic Habits. It's been very successful, and the main idea in this bestseller is if you want to be successful, you need good habits. Good habits leads you to success. Now, I hated that premise. I love the book, but I hated this premise. And the reason why is all my life, I tried my best to become one of the best therapists in the world and to have a very qualitative therapeutical work. And from my idea of a successful therapist, one very important thing is to disconnect result from my client's efforts. Why? Because if everything depends on my client's efforts, it means I have less control on the results. If I have less control of the result, I can guarantee less result because I have less control, obviously. Now, thinking that way was actually quite useful for me, and I actually think 80%, 90% of the time you can actually, if you're a successful therapist, disconnect the result and the outcome of the therapy from the client's efforts. But I couldn't, with all my research and effort all these many years, totally disconnect it from clients' efforts. It was actually not possible. I tried my best, but at some point you need good habits if you want to have changes, and if you want good habits, you need to put the effort. There's just no other way to square that circle. So don't try to avoid efforts, and with time, reflecting on why it may be the case that there's actually no solution to have a happy, striving, functional life without putting any efforts. Now, I understand that there may be some wisdom from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Maybe Allah doesn't want us to just have a happy life by snapping our fingers or without any effort, and maybe there's no value in a life that you can have and that you can make happy and striving without any effort. So maybe there's wisdom behind it. I don't know the exact wisdom, but I've seen wisdom reflecting on that. Though the main point is you won't be successful if you are not ready to put some effort into your actions. So don't try to avoid all effort by any cost. Now I give you a pro tip that allow you to have guaranteed success even though you are relying on your effort. Because the problem of effort is obviously this is reducing the chance of success because people don't want to do effort and people don't have the motivation to be consistent in their effort. So there is a pro tip that can actually help you to have success even though you need effort and you need to create good habits. And it is to not rely on your motivation, but to rely on other people's motivation. Look how it works. When you are relying on your motivation, most of the time your motivation will be failing you, but you can try to hijack other people's motivations. I'm not saying to hijack any people's motivations. Of course, a passenger in the streets won't help you. That's obvious. But from my experience, the most useful is paying someone good money to produce motivation in himself for you to help you. If you are ready to pay someone good money to help you change your habits, he will literally harass you for you to change his habits and you won't rely on your motivation. And from my experience, it's unfortunate, but one of the most motivated individual is someone that is paid good money. Now, if you don't have the money to pay other people, that would be surprising because most of the time my clients and people watching me are high-income Muslim. But let's say you don't want to pay money or this good money to someone to just have this other person motivation to help you change your life and have a better life. I think it's a bad choice, but it's all personal. If you don't want to do so, the next best thing that can help you is a loved partner or the loved one motivation. Sometimes love partner can be tricky because you can have fights and conflicts, but at least someone that loves you and wants your good, you can try to use this motivation, but it's definitely less powerful than someone paid good money. The second mistake I have made, and that may be surprising because I told you I'm a practicing Muslim, but it's actually come from a place of faith, is I actually tried my best to look for non-religious kinds of changes and to see how I can make changes within people without using religion. I know it sounds weird, but I promise you it comes from a good place. The truth is, I didn't want to take this responsibility and accountability to advise people on a religious level because I understood it was a very high responsibility in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yawm al-qiyamah. And I'm a therapist, I'm not an imam, so I didn't want to have to go into these religious matters. I wanted to stay clean. Another reason is it's true sometimes that it can be a hard conversation with many people. It's hard sometimes to have this conversation about things they need to change on this religious level because religious level is very intimate. So I was scared to go on that level with my clients, especially high-income Muslims. A lot of times they have a lot of differences in the way they practice, the way they see the religion. Sometimes they have different views of religion. Of course, I have my own view of religion. I'm very conservative. So I'm not saying all views are equal, but what I'm saying is I didn't want to put this kind of debate into my clinical practice. So I tried to avoid as much as possible to involve religion in this. But what happened is at some point I had a couple that came to me, a very distressed couple. They were about to divorce. The wife was pregnant of the first child, but it was so toxic. They were about to divorce, and actually before going into therapy with me, the wife was ready to leave home, and she said, I'll take in a hotel. I won't live with you anymore. It was very toxic, and we started the work, and lo and behold, we've made exceptional work. In just 10 days, they were striving, so happy, so in love. I was receiving calls from the husband and saying, I don't know what's happening. I love her like in the beginning, even more than the beginning. At the end of therapy, it was day 28, I think, I was receiving calls from the wife. She was saying, I'm so in love with him. I'm so happy to not have left the relationship. And what happened is at some point, this wife had to travel. So she traveled back to her home country. And what I didn't know, I thought they were very practicing Muslims, but what I didn't know is this wife, when she was alone, she was stopping the practice of her deen, and it was changing her. And so when she left and she went back to her country, many fights started to occur, and I didn't understand. It was like it was so perfect. What's happening? And only after I understood that her religious practice was not always good. Sometimes she was not practicing, and that's actually when she was not practicing, it changed the way she emoted, the way she related to other people, and that created massive problems. After that, they took another program, and we've worked and tried to fix that. But starting that day, I promised myself that I'll still be following people on a religious level. Now, obviously, I'm not an imam and I'm not doing this deep religious following and consulting because it's not my role, and I don't want to take this role, and I don't want to be famous as someone that have this role, because if I do so, many people will seek religious advice from me, and I'm just not fit, and I don't want to be fit for that, because I don't want to take the responsibility to advise other people on their religion. It's a very haunting responsibility for me. But even though I say, and I do believe that becoming a better Muslim won't automatically give you a better relationship, even though there is high correlation between both, but it won't automatically give you a better relationship. I do think that if you want to have a happier life and be a better human, you need to be a better Muslim. Let me explain the first points. First of all, we have example in our tradition of some of the most pious and steadfast person on the face of this earth, on the history of earth and mankind, and that have been in distressed or unsatisfied relationship. Let me provide you two examples. First one is Zayd ibn al-Haritha, which was raised by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam himself, and the wife of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, Zainab. Zainab, before she was married to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, she was married to Zayd ibn al-Haritha, and this was just a dysfunctional relationship. They weren't happy together, and they ended up divorcing. Does it mean they are not good Muslims? Obviously not. I don't think we can even say there's just one Muslim that can be compared to both of them in terms of iman and taqwa and so on and so forth. So it's not a question of them not being good Muslims. It's a question that being a better Muslim won't automatically give you a better relationship. Other example, we have Zubayr ibn al-Awwam, which is one of the companions promised in paradise, and we have Asma bint Abu Bakr, the daughter of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu, and everybody knows, I hope, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq. They were married for many years and they ended up divorcing. Does it mean they're bad Muslim? No, obviously not. They are good Muslim, but being a better Muslim won't automatically give you a better relationship. That can be said on the relationship level, even though it's a case of correlation is not causation. I agree that there is a high correlation between being a better Muslim and having a satisfied relationship. There's other cause and effect that need to be checked, and there's a place for empirical research in relationship science. Now, when it comes to individual work, I don't think we can say that there isn't a one-to-one match between becoming a better person and becoming a better Muslim. And I think you got to square that circle. Really, I think it's highly problematic in your faith if you believe that becoming a better Muslim is not becoming a better human, which means we can't escape it. Self-help, self-development, personal developments, and whatnot are only successful insofar that they are getting into the direction towards the direction of Islam and resembling more of Islam and not in itself as a science. That's my 2 cents about it. So the best path if you want to be a better person is always Islam. If other people are successful, it's just because what they are doing is looking like Islam, and so it's a wish version of Islam. I'll jump to my 4 advice that are religious advice that you should put in practice if you want to do the individual work. Now, I'll start by the best one, but the other one are very useful. I'm just putting the best in the first place because I want you to listen to it, and I don't know if you go to the end of this video, but I really try to focus and listen to all the advices because I think they are insightful advices. First one is have a good routine with fasting. And I'm speaking by experience. If I had to follow only one of these advice, I would choose fasting. Just try to have a routine with fasting. Fast on Monday, fast on Thursday. If you can add fast on the white days of the month, on the 13th, 14th, and 15th of the Islamic calendar. And if you can, try to fast more. You can have the fast of Dawood, why not? And if you can't do the fast of Dawood, try at least to have the fast of Sha'ban before Ramadan, to have the fast of Shawwal, the fast of the 10 days of Dhul Hijjah, and all this fasting. You need to have a good routine with them. In the past, when I was young, I had a very good, secure relationship with fasting. I was fasting every time I could fast. And I didn't realize until later how much it was helping me in my faith and correcting every part of my faith. At some point of my life, I ended up working a lot, and it just made me lose track of fasting, and I stopped fasting because I was working so much. And I think it's maybe your situation and your case. When I'm saying working so much, I was working from Fajr to Isha a lot of times. It was crazy week works. Sometimes it was more than 90 hours or maybe even hundreds of hours a week. So it was a lot of works for me, and I felt like I needed to have my sugar, my coffee and whatnot to be able to do the work. So I stopped fasting, and I totally stopped fasting. And that was actually a bad thing because I didn't realize until later how much it was impacting my other actions and my faith. And my faith only got on the right track when I started fasting again. So that's the reason why I would keep this on all the 4 advices, because when you have this, or at least for me personally, when you have this good relation with fasting, what's happening is all the other things are correcting in your life. Now, when I'm saying fasting, of course, there's the fast of the body, so you should stop eating and drinking in the whole day and stop having intimate relationship as well, of course. And you need to go back to the lessons about fasting if you want complete details about that. But what I'm trying to do as well is I try to have small change in my workload when I'm fasting, which means I'll work normally my whole day, but maybe 30 minutes before Maghrib, I would stop any activities and I would just try to sit and go to the masjid and read dua. Why it's important? I think it's important because you need to feel that these days are special, and that's how you'll be motivated to do this kind of thing even outside of fasting days. That's my first advice. My next advice, it can be generic, but I think the way I do it may be interesting for you, is to do a lot of dhikr. Now let me tell you why I think many people are not doing as much dhikr as they should nowadays in our modern lifestyle. It's all because of what you are holding on your hands. If you are on your phone, if you are on your computer, that's another thing. But it's all because of smartphone. They are, for me, the number one reason people are neglecting dhikr, because what's happening is what you are having in your hand is basically a cure for boredom. People are not used to be bored anymore. So every time there is boredom, they can't handle it, and they'll automatically go to their phone and try to go on social media or find a distraction somewhere. That's actually bad for you. And if you compare yourself with your ancestors, people in the past, they were probably doing way more dhikr than you. And the main reason was probably that was sometimes in the days where they had nothing to do. You can't escape it. You always have these moments where you need to wait or you need to commute, and you have times, but you are not taking this time to do dhikr because you are on your phone, and that's distracting you from boredom, but also dhikr. So the way I do to help me to do more dhikr is I try to not take my phone. Every time I can put my phone somewhere and just don't touch my phone, I'll do it. And it's helped me a lot to do more dhikr. And that's my advice. What you should do, for example, if you go to the masjid, don't take your phone with you. I try to have these moments, maybe like one morning, and you just give your phone to someone. You say you give it to a workmate, or you give it to your wife, or your husband, or you give it to your children if they are, of course, mature enough to help you on that. And you just say to that person, "Don't give me back my phone until that time." That's something that's been helping me, not being so much on my phone. And you'll just find the opportunity when you are not on your phone. There's some moment where you'll be bored, and automatically you'll go into dhikr mode in these moments. That's my second advice. Third advice, it's to remind a lot about death. When you remind death, you are always acting like it's the last action. You are always more focused in the worship and in the actions you are doing. Now, there's a way for me to remember death, and I want to share it with you, because a lot of people, I'll just tell them remember death, but they'll go back at their life and they say, oh, it's a good reminder, and they don't want to remember death. So there's a way for me to actually remember death, and it was hard for me to do so for a huge period of my life. I didn't do that thing I'll share with you, but when I started doing so, death was just under my face, and I started to have these moments where I would just think a lot about death, and I would be way more focused on my worship, and my internal state would change a lot. And it is to mention death in your dua. There is some specific dua where you are asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to end your life if it's the best for you. Like, Allahumma tawaffani idha alimta al-wafata khayran li. That's an example of such things. You have another dua which is وَجَعَلِ الْمَوْتَ زِيَادَةً لِي فِي كُلِّ خَيْرٍ وَجَعَلِ الْمَوْتَ رَاحَةً لِي مِنْ كُلِّ شَرٍ. And you have such du'as that are good. Now my advice would be to couple this dua with وَأَطِّلْ حَيَّتِي عَلَى طَاعَتِكَ. That's a good dua. Ulama have advised to, if necessary, to ask Allah for a longer life in His obedience. So I would do both. And what's happening when I do this, I'm asking to have a longer life in His obedience, but I'm also asking if I come to a point where it's not useful for me to be alive, just take my life. And this spiritual impact of just asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take your life, if it's the best for you, it's actually changing you, because you have this fear of death going back, because you're just mentioning death so much in your dua, and you've been asking death if it's the best for you. And that helped me a lot to have death in front of my two eyes and practicing as if I'll die tomorrow. And last advice, but not least, is try to listen to Quran a lot. But when I'm saying listen to Quran, I'm not saying to listen to these reels or shorts or TikToks with Quran in it, or these short snap of recitation. I think modern social media changed the way we listen to Quran, and that's unfortunate. We are not used anymore to have this long listening to Quran, and that's something bad for us. And what's happening when we don't listen to Quran so much, we are far away from the remainder of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, and we have bigger room for rumination and obsessive thought and intrusive thought, which is very bad for your mental health. So a good way I found to having better thoughts, to realign, to have all these teachings, these insights about life that we find in the Quran, and have my daily provision of Quran is, I'm trying to, because in your day, probably you won't find the opportunity. Maybe in driving, some people are driving a lot, so you could put it in your car. But beside that, when you're working, it's very hard for you to put Quran, and it's maybe not even advised because you are focusing on something else. So you're not focused on listening to Quran. By the way, it's maybe the same when you're driving a car. Maybe it's not advised because maybe you won't focus on the road, or you'll focus on the road and not in the Quran. When you're cooking or other life actions like this, a lot of time you are distracted, so you are not very focused on listening to Quran. But what worked for me is to sleep by listening Quran, which means I put the intention. That's important. Listen to that point. I put the intention to listen to the Quran before sleeping. It's not just putting this as some kind of way to sleep, and my intention is not to help me sleep. It's just to listen to it, and I focus on listening to it until I get tired and I sleep, which a lot of times is actually very fast, maybe 2, 3, 4 minutes. But when you do so, you are stopping this obsessive thought and unnecessary thought before sleeping, which is important because high-income, successful Muslims a lot of time have a lot of responsibility, which means they have all these obsessive thoughts. They are in problem-solving modes a lot of their time, and that's unhealthy, and that just means you're just having a lot of stress before sleeping, and it affects your sleep and so on and so forth. But there is so much blessing in listening to Quran before sleeping, and when you do so with the right application, then you can listen to long surat as well. Sometimes it will take longer to sleep, but it's good because that means you listen more to the Quran, and you can contemplate more about the Quran. And when you are doing this before sleeping, you are not in hurry to anything, because you'll be sleeping and you will be waking up at working hours, so you don't care if it takes time, and you are not in a hurry. You have time to contemplate and follow the Quran and follow long recitation of the Quran. And if you do so, what happened for me is you are actually more focused in your salat after that, especially for those that pray in the masjid, because you are training your attention skill listening to Quran, and that was helping me as well to have more focus in my salat and in my ibadats in general. So that would be my last advice. I think it's very useful before sleeping. Try to put some Quran. That's a better way to listen to Quran than just this quick recitation, when you are focusing more on the recitator skill than the Quran itself, really. Let's face it. That's it for today. Thanks for listening to me. If you have anything you want to share in comments, please share it in comment. Any questions regarding real relationship science that you can put into practice, please ask me, because my goal is to help you, and I need to know what's your struggle if I want to help you. And share this video with anybody that can be helped with this video. And that's it. Barakallahu fik. Thank you for listening to me. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.